as long as you come into the country with a view to living here or working here or retiring here, spending your money here, and go out of your way to involve yourself, then I don't think there should be an issue. And I don't really, not that I don't entertain it, but I think it's an excuse that people, well, they don't want us here.
Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand, and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. Imagine packing up your life and moving from the rainy streets of Ireland to the sun-soaked Costa del Sol. Now, if you're listening to this episode, that's probably something that you've set your sights on at some point. But let's be honest, a big move like this does come with its fair share of challenges and stresses. Today, we're diving into the real story of someone who made that leap back in 2008 and has fully integrated into the culture here in Spain. Today, we're chatting with Jessica of Decipher Spain. Jessica not only made this transition herself, but she's also made it her mission to help others to do the same, minus the stress. We're going to uncover her best pieces of advice for a smooth move, the surprising aspects of Spanish life that you might not expect, and how to truly integrate into the culture without losing your sanity. So before we dive into today's episode, Warner, hit us with your Spanish word of the day.
The Spanish word of the day is huevos, and huevos means eggs. And I love my eggs scrambled.
You've been enjoying your scrambled eggs for breakfast this morning. Thanks, as always, Warner. Jessica, it's amazing to have you here today. I'm so excited you've been able to come on as our guest, because I know that the insights that you're going to share through this discussion are going to be so helpful and insightful to our listeners. Tell me, how are you today? How are you doing?
Overall, quite good. Taking August easy and recharging batteries, ready to get back to work properly in September.
Talk to me a little bit about your own journey to Spain.
So I did my Leaving Cert in Ireland. So I thought, right, what'll I do? I'll do political science, and I have to complement that with something else. And I thought, right, what can I do that's kind of easy that I'm good at? Spanish. Great. After 2 years in UCD, I kind of went, oh God, I'm going to have to do my finals next year, and I don't really speak this language, and I'm just not going to do that well. So back then, the majority of my classmates were going off in Erasmus, but I thought, there's no point in that. They're all going together. They're not going to learn. They're just going on a party for a year. I didn't love university anyway. So I was like, I want to get this done as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. So I went and I spoke to one of my teachers and I said, I don't want to go in Erasmus. I don't want to draw out this process, but I do want to learn. What other options do I have? And he said, well, there is a program called Auxiliares de Conversación, which is language assistants, classroom language assistants for native speakers who are in university. You can apply. He said there aren't that many places for Ireland, and they usually go to people who have finished their degrees already. So let's apply. I'll write you a nice reference, and if you get it, you get it. And if you don't, you'll just have to study harder. So we applied, and I did get it. And I remember when I got the letter, my mum and I opened it and we went onto Google Maps on our laptop. That's all we had really back then. And we found the village that I had been assigned. And she immediately said, well, if you hate it, you can just come out. And that's kind of what I live by now. If you hate it, you just go home. Turn around, get on the flight and go home if you hate it. So that was kind of the methodology that we took. If I hated, I'd come home. And I went out in September to a very small village in Castilla-La Mancha, which is in central Spain. And I loved it. I did 4 years there.
4 years. Wow. So you completely immersed yourself in the culture from day dot. Yeah.
There was nothing about it that I didn't like. Only thing that I really didn't love was the actual teaching element of it. I found it very repetitive. The first year was great. Then the second year, same stuff, different kids. After 4 years, I was like, nah, okay, I'm not doing this. So I went home. I didn't really know what to do. I was 24 24, I guess, 24, 25, I didn't really know what to do. So I just said, well, I'll go home and I'll get a job and maybe I just don't like Spain anymore. I was at home. I was in Dublin working for the Argentine embassy, going on 4 years there. And then I just thought one day, sitting in traffic, what am I doing? I don't really like this. I can't, like, there's nowhere for me to go as PA to an ambassador, or like there's no ladder to climb there. And I didn't really like Ireland. Not that I didn't like it. I knew that I wouldn't have the opportunities there that I could create for myself. Thought about it and I thought, right, where do you want to go? I wanted to go somewhere where there was going to be a bilingual job market. Mm-hmm. I wanted to go somewhere that I would be, I guess my bilingual talents would be well remunerated, finding work available. I wanted to go somewhere where I could get on the property ladder. That was important to me. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to be able to buy a house on my own in Ireland. So there were a few different, I wanted to go somewhere that was near to an international airport. I wanted a more gentle climate than what I was used to in central Spain. So they were all of my things, and I settled on Malaga. And it kind of went exactly the way I had envisaged. I found somewhere to live. I was married by then as well.
Okay.
So I found somewhere for us to live in Malaga city centre. The rent was way less than what I was paying in Dublin. I found a job very quickly. Initially, I was teaching. Then through friends that I met, I ended up then working for, I had a bilingual role at a finance company. And yeah, so I went from falling in love in Spain in 2008, central Spain, to really working out where I needed to be to make my life happen the way it is now happening.
Amazing. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that with me. And it is so inspiring. And I can relate to that feeling of being in Spain, falling in love with Spain, returning to Ireland, and kind of sitting there scratching your head, looking out the car window going, there's a niggle in me that doesn't want to be here anymore. But you made that happen and your journey is incredible. Talk to me a little bit about then your own journey into establishing your own business and like what you do today, which is very much around supporting other people make their dream a reality with as less stress as possible. So how did you end up doing your purpose or your mission, let's say?
Well, it wasn't it's not something that I always dreamed of. I was working full time for a finance company. Then I decided that I wanted to set up an events company, which what I did in Ireland. I was PA to the ambassador, and then I also used to organize all the embassy events and coordinate all of that kind of thing. So I wanted to set something up here in what I loved. So I went part-time in my job, went and with my husband, and we set up this events company. That was in 2019. So then what happens? And in the office, we'll say, because it was a company that works with, well, locals and foreigners, but foreigners used to come in and not have a clue, not have a clue where to get their NIE numbers, not have a clue how to set up their social security if, say, the company wasn't doing it that way. It was always like, oh, Jess will do that. Jess will do that. Okay. And then I thought, okay, now I have to start doing this. And, I had friends as well who are English speakers, been here for quite some time, don't necessarily speak the language. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that? And I thought, okay, now I need to start charging for this. Yeah, I started working with expats who were already here to just make their day-to-day lives a little bit easier, And then I started to see that actually it would have been better if they had that help from before they even arrived.
Yes, 100%.
That's where Decipher Spain came from. We definitely work slightly differently to a lot of different relocation companies in that we don't just do it for you. I want you to learn. I want you to understand, because what I was seeing in the, say, friends and people I was working with is they were, they would pay somebody to go and get an NRE number for them, or pay somebody to, go and help them open a bank account, or find somewhere to rent. But they didn't understand what the process was, why the process is the way it is. And it was just very much like, well, Spain is difficult. You just don't understand it. So our mission, I guess, is to help people from the beginning to experience all the things with our support, but to experience it and to learn as they go, so that if in a year's time they have to renew a residency card or they have to change banks, they don't have to reach out to me or pay somebody else to do it for them. They understand how it happened the first time.
Amazing. So you're really supporting them to be self-sufficient, particularly if their mid to short or long-term goal is to make Spain their home. They need to know why they're doing it and understand how to do it themselves moving forward.
That doesn't work for a lot of people. A lot of people don't want that. They just wanted to just get it done.
So if that's how you're potentially perceiving things from the beginning, it's going to restrict how you're going to integrate, and you're potentially not going to fully immerse yourself into the culture. I love that mission. I think it's fabulous. That self-sufficient piece is great. But listen, I hear all the time from people the same worries over fears when people are considering relocating to Spain. And I'd love to touch on some of these worries with you and what advice you give to people. Now, typically the most common fears and worries that I see would be associated around paperwork. So exactly what you just mentioned there. Spanish bureaucracy is difficult. That Spanish bureaucracy gets a bad reputation because of how it's perceived.
It's not just Spanish bureaucracy. People forget because they're born in a country, they've lived in a country their whole life, and they've never had to deal with anything paperwork-wise in their own country. Their own country is probably just as... Ireland is not easy. They're scared of it, so they'd shy away from it.
Totally. And also not assuming that it's going to be the same as it is at home. It's going to be different. It's a different country with a different approach. So I think that part of entering that with an open mindset.
Unless you've experienced that exact side of bureaucracy in your own country, you're just assuming that it's easier.
Yeah. I also hear another fear around not fitting into the culture. And this one has actually been more prevalent recently with our clients, particularly with the media reports around the tourism riots in Barcelona and Mallorca. People are starting to get concerned, can I immerse into the culture? Can I, integrate? What's the sentiment like on the ground about foreigners moving to Spain? That one has been coming up a lot lately. And is that something you see with your clients? Do they tend to get concerned about integrating?
I guess they do get concerned about integrating, and it is not easy, but you just have to put yourself out of your comfort zone. I always say to people, when you go out for coffee in the morning, sit at the bar, don't sit at a table. I do not ever recommend anybody goes to in-person Spanish classes. Why? Because you're going with Sandra and Mary and Joe and John, and what's going to happen? Somebody's going to say, we go for a drink. And then suddenly Sandra and Mary and Joe and John are your best mates. So to me, that doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. And people say, well, I prefer in person. That's fine. But then that means that you have to really go out of your way to use that language, and really go out of your way to then say to people, actually, I don't really want to hang out with you because I want to go and meet some Spanish people. So you do have to put yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think that people are starting to use the protests, which are so minimal in the grand scheme of how big these cities are. And, and that sentiment is well documented, obviously, that, people are getting pissed off, not with foreigners. They're getting pissed off with the fact that rents are going up due to supply and demand. They're getting pissed off at the fact that what used to be family homes are becoming tourist lets. So as long as you come into the country with a view to living here or working here or retiring here, spending your money here, and go out of your way to involve yourself, then I don't think there should be an issue. And I don't really, not that I don't entertain it, but I think it's an excuse that people, they don't want us here.
I agree. And it's all about context with that topic, exactly as you said there. If your long-term plan is to integrate, to be in the country, to participate positively to the society, to contribute locally to local business, that isn't an issue. And you correctly articulated there that this isn't about foreigners. It's not about tourists traveling in. It's a supply and demand issue. And we're seeing that not just in Spain, it's in other countries. It's a worldwide issue at the moment. Same issue in Venice, for example. But I also hear fears around the language, and you've touched on that a little bit as well. And I hear this one a lot, I'm too old to learn, I'm not going to do that. And it ends up becoming a fear.
It's just fear, because we fear the unknown, and we fear not being able to be as efficient in another language as we are in our own. And we fear kind of almost going, like, I hear people say all the time, I'm so glad that we have you. I just wouldn't be able for this. If you had to do it, you would. If you absolutely found that you had to do it, you would.
Yeah.
So I had to do it, and I did. And it wasn't about me being 20 years of age and suddenly being, great at the language. When I was in university, I found it very difficult to learn the language. Why? Because I wasn't paying that much attention and I wasn't using it. Again, it's kind of an excuse. I'm too old for this and I'm too old for that. Go out and use it. Put yourself in a situation where you have to use it.
Yeah, great advice.
And every day, not just once a week when you go to your class or you do your class online, every single day, change the language on your phone, change the language on Netflix, put yourself in situations that are difficult so that you start to recognize patterns in the language.
I love that practical advice, changing the language on your phone, never thought about suggesting that to somebody. Change your language settings on Netflix, because that's great.
It has to relate to your day-to-day. And if that's just going for coffee in the morning, ordering your breakfast, going to the supermarket, using your banking app, that's fine.
Absolutely. And a big part of your mission at Decipher Spain is to really make relocation to people's new life in the sun as easy as possible, while also, as you mentioned, encouraging them to integrate into the Spanish way of life, which I love. And you really do encourage integration. You know, I always see it in your Instagram stories, very practical tips about how people can integrate. What would you say are your top tips for people when they are integrating into Spanish life?
So I often say to people, like, instead of going to a big supermarket like Mercadona or Carrefour, where it's a bit, nameless and faceless, go to where whatever your local butcher is, whatever your local fish shop is, whatever your local greengrocer is. And even if you only have 5 words, use them. Use the language that you have, and people will start to recognize you. And if you go back to the same places all the time, people will start to recognize you, and they will start to realize that, you're not a tourist, and they'll notice a difference in, say, how you speak, and they will help you.
Yes.
So I would always say, create yourself a routine and keep it as just that, a routine. Instead of going to 5 different coffee places every week, go to one and talk to the people.
Because then you become familiar, you become local, you're putting yourself out there to encourage conversation. And I think when you start to do that, your confidence builds, and naturally then things feel easier. They don't feel as strange or that you're so isolated. That's fantastic. I love what you mentioned there around do things that are uncomfortable, go to local businesses, build up a rapport and create a routine. I think when somebody starts to move into Spain in their early journey, I think those tips are very critical in terms of getting established into that daily routine where you don't necessarily feel like you're on a permanent holiday, because that can happen. That's a trap that people can fall into.
Yeah, it's a trap that people can fall into. And it only lasts about a year. And then they usually fall into a very deep depression. And I do try to avoid that by preparing people, by making sure that they speak to a psychologist before they come. I have one that I work with, so that they will recognize certain feelings, because it's not a holiday. People forget that sometimes. And once the admin is all done and there's no next, at the beginning, you're constantly looking, well, I have to get the NI, and then I have to do the residency, and then I have to do the bank, and then I have to get the car, and then I have to get the house. And then suddenly they wake up one day and go, well, I've done all the things. Now what?
Yeah. Can I ask you an honest question then when you find that somebody is in that situation? Because it's important to paint the reality of a relocation journey. This does happen, If somebody is in that situation and they had maybe previously worked with you before and reached out for support, what would be the steps that you would encourage them to look at?
I immediately send them a psychologist that I work with, both on a personal level and a professional level. I say, listen, you can go and talk to her, or not. You can take your own steps, but that's just not something that I would try to fix myself. I feel like when somebody hits that obstacle, they really do need to fix it before it becomes a problem. So when things like alcoholism and drug addiction or gambling or whatever can creep in.
They do.
I'm sure that people listening will go, oh, that would never happen to me.
You would, and I agree with you. It's a sense of, there's almost a sense of pride that can kick in as well, that they don't necessarily want to go back and tell their families at home what they're going through or dealing with, and they try to navigate it alone, and it just can cause a spiral.
Yes, when it's almost like, it's like a pride thing, and it's also almost like a grateful thing. Like, why am I feeling like this? You've moved your entire life to a country that you don't know. There is an element of be grateful that you were able to make it happen, but it's also hard, and that's okay.
Yeah, it is hard, and that is totally okay. I completely agree with your words of wisdom there. Jessica, it's been incredible and insightful to chat to you this morning. Tell me this, how can our listeners get in touch with you to discuss their relocation journey?
Your listeners can get in touch with me through my website, which is www.decipherspain.com. I am very active on Instagram, so also at Decipher Spain, and Facebook similarly.
Amazing. I will put all of those details into the show notes, but if you are on Instagram, do follow Jessica. I love her stories. She gives amazing insights about different controversial local cultural nuances from a really fresh perspective, and a very honest, open perspective about some things that you might need to think about if you are preparing to relocate to Spain. So do give her a follow because I know you'll enjoy the content. Jessica, thank you so much for your words of wisdom and for your time this morning. Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves and, of course, our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@wlcostaproperties.net. Or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website, www.wlcostaproperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.